What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new film Speak No Evil, and I'll go 100% spoiler-free at first, but then I'll give you a fair warning before I call attention to some of the key differences between this new movie and the original from 2022. Yes, Blumhouse felt it necessary to shoot a remake of a movie with the exact same name, which came out 2 whole years ago. But of course, Blumhouse felt compelled to do a remake for American audiences with fewer Dutch and/or Danish accents. But the premise is simple. Here's what you can find on IMDb. A family gets invited to spend a whole weekend in a lonely home in the countryside, but as the weekend progresses, they'll soon realize that the family who invited them has a dark side laying inside them. But let me be clear, the original is not some impenetrable art house film. It's a disturbing genre film that was shot almost entirely in English, but because it actually employs subtlety and social satire and a ruthless climax that no one will ever recover from once you've seen it, naturally Blumhouse felt like they had to do their own version, which they felt like American audiences might find more acceptable or more easily digestible. And I find this whole exercise to be deeply cynical on their part, so I have no problem whipping out some withering condescension and disdain on my end as I review this ill-conceived remake. Because it's almost as if they're slapping American audiences in the face saying, we know you don't have the taste or the intelligence or the patience to appreciate a movie with ambiguity or a movie that might upset you, so here's our dumbed down version for stupid people. Dig in, enjoy our idiotic happy ending, which reveals our complete and total lack of understanding of what the original is all about. And that is how I feel about this movie. It shows a complete and total misunderstanding of what the original movie was striving for and reaching for and achieved very successfully. And I cannot emphasize this enough. If you watch the original film, by the time you get to the ending, it's devastating, it's traumatizing, it's horrifying, all the things ostensibly that people are paying for when they go to see a horror movie. But of course, Blumhouse is like, no, we got to change it and just turn it into a stupid American action movie. But let me pause to say one nice thing about this new movie. James McAvoy is incredible. His performance is raw, at times grotesque, frequently hilarious, and perhaps this whole exercise in creating a soulless remake might be worth it if over the long run this movie leads to more people taking an interest in the original film. I didn't see it for the first time until last week. It only grossed about $600,000 worldwide on a budget of $3 million. And I hate to say this, I suspect that from a business standpoint, Blumhouse will turn out to be right in the long run and make some money with their remake, which is budgeted at $15 million, with considerably more marketing dollars at their disposal. I mean, they've been playing this trailer left and right all summer long. But this new movie, it's vastly inferior. I'd say the first half is enjoyable, but the second half is about as scary as a fart, like a particularly nasty one, but a fart nonetheless. And it underlines so many horrible, like, new Hollywood trends or tropes at play today that I feel safe in saying everything Blumhouse touches turns to shit. And there are exceptions, of course, but after seeing what they did to the Halloween franchise and then seeing what they did to the Exorcist franchise, this latest insult to good taste in the horror genre overall has left me in a place where I hope they never get their greedy fingers on any movie that I like ever again. So what's the big deal, you might be asking yourself? Who cares? It's only a movie. Well, I care, because the original film presents a scenario where this couple's, they're so civilized and they're so well behaved that they fail to see the danger staring them square in the face until much too late. And even then, because they're so well-mannered, they struggle to take action, even if it's to save their own skin. But the genius of the original movie, and I do not use that word lightly, but the genius of the original movie is seeing to what degree one couple will continue to accommodate the other's antics, creating one cringe-inducing scenario after another where the audience is squirming in their seats, squirming on their behalf, wanting just to shout at the screen, like, can't you see these people are fucking crazy? Like, do something! And while the original film eventually turns into the most horrific horror movie imaginable, for much of it, the original movie is this strangely perverse dark comedy with all sorts of interesting social satire about the existential malaise of hardworking, well-educated people who say and do all the right things, only to find themselves completely miserable with how their lives turned out. Meanwhile, the so-called villains of the movie, they seem to get a hell of a lot more joy out of their lives, even if their actions are completely, utterly unconscionable. But by the end of the movie, you're almost rooting for the villains to put this properly behaved couple right out of their misery. Which brings us 2 whole years forward to the present day with this remake by writer-director James Watkins, who either didn't understand the original or he hated the ending so badly that he felt like he could improve upon it. And admittedly, he had some help on this front from 2 other writers. But the second half of the remake, there's no getting around it. It completely fucking sucks. But the first half, the movie kind of fooled me. It lured me in. It's almost a shot-for-shot remake with the original, but with the occasional kind of dirty but hysterical commentary by James McAvoy's character. But then around the halfway point of the movie, I started noticing a few key differences that started to fall apart. And then the movie just implodes. It's almost like it gets to a point where Mackenzie Davis' character is like, don't you realize I was in that terrible Terminator movie, Dark Fate? You're messing with the wrong bitch. Whereupon the movie completely disintegrates into the laziest conventional action movie you've ever seen. It's predictable. It's got a happy ending. It doesn't have an ounce of horror or thrills or chills or suspense or any of that. But there was a small crowd in my theater that was yelling and screaming and eating it up with a spoon. But I sat there in my chair completely miserable, kind of depressed that all my suspicions about this movie in advance, they all turned out to be true. So final points before spoilers. Do I think this movie's enjoyable? I'd say 50-50. First half's enjoyable, second half is terrible. James McAvoy is absolutely incredible. I think some people will fool themselves into thinking that the movie stays good long after it just completely falls to pieces, because sometimes people do that. Like if they like the first part of something well enough, they'll just lie to themselves about what is staring them square in the face in the second half of a movie. But do I think it'll make money? I mean, it's a $15 million budget. I don't know how much they spent on marketing, but it's going to have to gross probably somewhere around like $60 million after the revenue split with theaters for Blumhouse to turn a profit. Blumhouse, they've proven many times over they are masters at squeezing dollars out of every single movie, like Five Nights at Freddy's. No one thought that was going to be a hit, and it just took off like a rocket. But they've also proven that they know how to burn money under the right circumstances. Just getting the rights to The Exorcist cost them basically like the GDP of a small country, and that movie completely, totally died. So yeah, Blumhouse, they are not 100% in their track record, but for me, this was just yet another example of Blumhouse ruining something that I love and adore. Like, do I feel it as personally as I did with Halloween Kills or The Exorcist Believer? No, because I just discovered the original movie like a week ago, but it does show that anytime Blumhouse wants to buy something or get the rights to something and try to do their own version of it, they are probably going to fuck it up. But let's talk some spoilers. Last warning, 3, 2, 1. And don't worry, I'm not going to belabor the obvious. Obviously, you can tell I was disappointed. I wasn't even disappointed by the final film. It just confirmed everything that I worried that the film would be. But I knew this film was starting to change or veer away from the original at a key point. If you're familiar with the original movie, there's a point where the couples go out to dinner and they have too many drinks and they're playing all this loud music coming back, and one couple's behaving inappropriately on the dance floor and the other couple is kind of acting a little annoyed, or they're just they're joyless buzzkills that always like don't want you to drive too fast, blah, blah, blah. But they get home, and kind of the nerdy couple, they're actually making love for the first time probably in 10 years, but their daughter is kind of begging for help or like calling for aid up in the bedroom of the little boy of the couple where they're staying. But the main couple, they decide to just keep screwing, and as a result, the mean couple, or the evil couple, invites the little girl into the bedroom where the father is sleeping naked, and so that disturbs the mother of the little girl, and that's where things start to go awry. But in this new movie, first and foremost, Mackenzie Davis and what the hell's the name of the male protagonist? Scooter McNairy, is that his name? Scoot McNairy. They don't have sex because, showing sex in a Hollywood movie would just make people, fall to pieces because it would just be too traumatizing. So they removed that. And I was like, that's interesting. And then in the original film, as they're driving away in secret before the main couple's even woken up, the daughter complains that her stuffed animal's been left back at the house. So they're forced to turn around and go back and get it. Whereupon, once the husband's gone inside, the mother realizes that the stuffed animal actually is in the car. She chastises the child. They go back in. Everybody makes apologies, and that kind of allows the second half of the movie, the more traumatizing part, to begin. But in this remake, the child doesn't realize that the stuffed animal's still in the car, because that would mean Mackenzie Davis would have to chastise the child for being an idiot, for being a 12-year-old overly attached to a stuffed animal. And so I just noticed it's a little thing, like you're not chastising the child for obnoxious behavior, and you're removing sex. Like those are warning signs, but they wouldn't break the movie if not for the fact that in the second half of the movie, how can I put this? Like the first movie, it's just, it tears a hole in your fucking soul with what happens, and the second half of this new movie is the complete and total opposite. But just as a way of offering a contrast between the original movie and the new movie, it's like the last 30 minutes where you have the key differences. And I'm sure a lot of people have willfully and deliberately blacked out the horrors of the original film, but what ends up happening is the evil couple ends up kidnapping the daughter of the nice couple, chopping off her tongue and handing her off to the babysitter, who takes her off to be like the replacement child, because they do this cycle over and over again where they invite in couples, they kill the couple, take all their money, kidnap the little kid, the kid eventually goes psycho or has to be killed off, and they start the process over again. But then the original film, after the little girl's had her tongue chopped off, which that alone, you're just like, you want to die when you see it. But they take the couple out into the middle of nowhere, make them strip, and then beat them to death with rocks. And the couple doesn't do shit. They just stand there and take it, and just they acquiesce and accept their fate like polite, civilized Western Europeans are supposed to, or at least as this film is criticizing them for their behavior, because it's the demons of the movie, like the villains of the movie that actually show independence and the ability to fight for what's theirs. And they are despicable, horrible, evil people, but there's a certain zest for life that makes them more charismatic than the central couple. But let's talk about this new movie. This is clearly a situation where the filmmakers decided, well, the original movie was wrong. It might have scared people and been an impressive movie. Impressive enough where we want to buy the rights to it and remake it. But instead, at a certain point, Mackenzie Davis is like, all right, it's time to draw a line in the sand. She almost tries to turn into Dustin Hoffman from Straw Dogs, which is yet another traumatizing movie, traumatizing for different reasons, but this movie is not Straw Dogs. But of course, Mackenzie Davis starts hiding box cutters in her pocket, and her daughter's hiding syringes, and they're hiding acid, and they're basically gathering all these weapons, and at a certain point, they start fighting back, and it is so stupid. Because first and foremost, I keep forgetting his name, Scoot McNairy's character proves that he is the ultimate Ken doll with no penis, because every step of the way he's like, I'm sorry, I'm scared, I can't do anything to help, what are we going to do? And Mackenzie Davis is like, I'll show you what you're going to do, and just proceeds to beat 7 shades of shit out of the mean couple, as well as their friend who's shown up with a shotgun. And at the very end of the movie, when James McAvoy looks like he's finally going to get his revenge and kill the daughter, of course, the daughter gets to finally take out the bad guy. I'm like, all right, I get it. You made the mistake of taking on 2 American girl bosses. Little did you know that American girl bosses in Hollywood movies are incapable of error or weakness or ever being destroyed. And so then they just ride off at the end with this kind of strange, obligatory happy ending. It's like, it's a horror movie. You're allowed to end it on a sad note, like Rosemary's Baby ends with Rosemary accepting the fact that she is the mother of the devil's son. Or The Exorcist. They save the little girl, but the hero of the story ends up dying in the process. Or Night of the Living Dead. The hero survives the whole story only to be shot as he's mistaken for a zombie. Horror movies are allowed to end in grim, nasty terrain. Or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The girl gets away, but she's in the back of a pickup truck, covered in blood, shrieking and screaming. You know she's never going to be all right. And we see Leatherface, waving his chainsaw around the air. But that is a bleak, horrifying ending, which just leaves the audience shattered. And I know it's going to come as a huge surprise to the people at Blumhouse who specialize in making horror movies, but that's what a lot of horror fans want. I won't say they all want that, but most horror fans become obsessed with the genre because they've been traumatized at one point or another by a movie at some point in their life, and they're like, ooh, that was intense. I want that experience again. Which movies will take me to the dark side and feed me the red meat that I want? Well, in this case, it's the original Speak No Evil, not the remake. So long story short, if you want to see a movie which was a commercial disappointment at the time of its release, but one that you will never forget, the ending is horrific, watch the original from 2022. It is readily available. Or if you want to see the American alternative with the predictable action beats and the obligatory happy ending, watch the new one. But it is interesting how we America and Western Europe have so much in common in terms of our shared history, but when it comes to film culture, it's this is the perfect contrast between how do the Europeans do it and how do the Americans do it. And obviously Americans are really good at making money with movies, or sometimes they are. But I think when it comes to art and emotional impact, sometimes our European buddies have a distinct advantage. What are some other good examples of American remakes of European movies? I guess there was The Vanishing, which did it. Of course, there was the vampire flick. I always forget. I think it's called Let Me In America, but Don't Let Me in Europe. Hang on, I gotta look this up real quick. Sorry, I got it wrong. The original film is called Let the Right One In, which is terrifying, and then the remake, which actually was pretty good, was called Let Me In. And then, of course, when it comes to Japanese horror, we get Ringu, which was turned into The Ring. This is not a new phenomenon. Hollywood's been doing it for a long time. But for me, when a movie's brand new, in this case, 2 years old, just watch the movie. Or if Blumhouse really felt like it kind of didn't get the attention it deserved, they should have slapped their name on it and done a fresh distribution strategy in America. Hey, this came out 2 years ago, it didn't get the attention it deserves, but we think this horror film is doing something right. But instead, they do this stupid remake. It reminds me of that situation where a lot of documentaries, which are really good, will then get remade as narrative, scripted drama remakes. one of the most notorious examples is when you had this incredible documentary called Man on Wire about a guy who did a tightrope walk between the two towers of the World Trade Center. And then a few years later, Robert Zemeckis turned it into that ridiculous movie, The Walk, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And, you know, thankfully, kind of like, I guess, the good taste prevailed in that situation where The Walk was a huge failure, Man on Wire was a giant success. But it's like, if you like something enough where you feel compelled to do a remake, just trust the original. Like, put your voice and your energy behind it and creating exposure for it or creating awareness for it, and then go off and use it as inspiration for whatever your own individual projects might be. But as I kind of offer my closing argument about this movie, like in both the original and in the remake, they're constantly saying like, well, why are you doing this? And it's the bad guys say, well, because you let me. And I feel like I might be saying the same. Like, why would you remake Speak No Evil 2 years later? And the answer would be, because you let me. So on that grim, pessimistic note, I'm going to bring this to a close. Definitely check out the original movie, and you know, you're on your own when it comes to the new one. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. But I hope everybody has a great weekend. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.